Doom: The Dark Ages Revelations might actually be the best Doom experience ever made. I was invited to a special DLC preview event alongside other creators where I got an in-depth look at the upcoming DLC, followed by a private Q&A with Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton. Today, I'll be sharing absolutely everything I learned during the presentation, including a first look at new gameplay and Repertorium 3.0 content, significantly deeper explanations on previously confirmed details, and loads of entirely new information that comes straight from Hugo and Marty themselves. First, let's touch on some of the general information. Doom: The Dark Ages Revelations will feature 4 levels and 1 hub, which is also a level. Although that may initially seem relatively small, game director Hugo Martin has assured us that there's so much content packed into each mission that it often feels like 10 individual levels. Regardless of the exact count, we do have confirmation that the DLC features more than both of the Ancient Gods expansions combined, coming in at around 10 to 12 hours of playtime for an initial run of the campaign. For those of you who may be worried about the difficulty, you'll be happy to know that Revelation starts off at a challenge level that should be comfortable for most Slayers by default, but it will eventually surpass the difficulty of Ancient Gods Part 1 as you explore the optional endgame content. And speaking of the endgame content, let's dive into the overall campaign progression structure, which is a completely new system that's never been featured in a Doom game before. The auto map now offers 2 distinct modes with their own unique set of objectives: main path and endgame. Roughly 60% of all DLC content is tied to the main path. This includes the expansion's primary narrative, where general progression is centered around upgrading the new Chain Spear and further extending the Slayer's health, ammo, and armor capacity. The Shield Saw will also need to be re-enhanced, as players will find that its upgrades have been reset to a previous tier once they reacquire it. As you complete each main path level, a fragment of the Master Key will be rewarded. The full key will be forged after defeating the final main path boss and reaching the story's conclusion, allowing you to access the initial layer of endgame content. So, how does the endgame work? Once the initial campaign has been completed, players can return to each level with their Master Key to unlock massive new areas that were previously inaccessible. These areas are not retreads or remixes of main path content. They contain all new challenges meant for players who have a firm grasp on the newly expanded gameplay loop and are thirsty for more. Within these combat zones, players can discover a unique set of optional encounter types. First, we have Praetor Suit encounters, which provide some of the most challenging battles that Revelations has to offer at this stage of the endgame. Next, there's Slayer Trials, a set of arcade mode-styled levels complete with a dedicated scoring system. And finally, there's Classic Levels. These retro maps are fun bonus experiences that allow you to blast through original Doom and Doom 2 levels with the 93 shotgun. This isn't the only classic content Revelations has to offer, as Nightmare levels will seemingly provide brief, narrative-driven flashback sequences that expand on Flynn Taggart's story. I don't have direct confirmation, but I believe these flashbacks will be present as main path content and not bonus in-game missions. Once you clear all available objectives, what's next? Those brave enough to conquer the first layer of in-game challenges will be rewarded with the Astral Key, which grants access to the Uber Boss. While difficult, Hugo Martin believes that this fight is easily the best id Software has ever produced, making it something that dedicated fans won't want to miss. After you've tested your mettle and slain the Uber Boss, 4 incredibly special Master Arenas will become accessible. These are hands down the most intense and wildly difficult arenas Doom: The Dark Ages has to offer, requiring a complete mastery of the combat loop and unmatched determination. Overcoming these final challenges will reward you with a new set of DLC content for the Repertorium 3.0. This includes instant access to the full roster of Revelations enemies, a set of DLC-focused encounter presets, the fully upgraded Revelations arsenal, and 3 new maps set across Hell's Core, Osius, and Classic Hell. Additionally, the new and improved Repertorium will also include a suite of DLC music tracks from Finishing Move and several classic remixes by Andrew Hulshult. Wow, that is an overwhelming amount of new content. Thankfully, they've added an objective wheel that allows you to select which remaining tasks you want to target at any given time, so you should have no trouble keeping track of your remaining objectives. I also want to remind you that the fully customizable gameplay sliders will be available throughout the entire experience, so you can always lower the difficulty if any of the endgame content gives you too much trouble. Now that we've learned how the progression structure works, let's move on to the greatly expanded combat, followed by some additional exclusive details from Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton. Aside from one secret weapon that I won't be discussing here today, the firearms remain widely unchanged. All of the additional gameplay mechanics and chances for heightened skill expression come from the Slayer's left hand. The most notable addition to the arsenal is, of course, the Chain Spear, which boasts an impressively wide variety of offensive and defensive actions such as slashing, dashing, stabbing, slamming, throwing, meat hooking, and orbiting. Some of these abilities can be used freely at any point. However, actions such as the stab, slam, and throw cannot be used without an empowerment charge. Only 3 charges can be held at any given time, and they have to be re-earned once spent, ensuring that some of the expansion's most powerful abilities can't be mindlessly abused. Players who embrace the expanded combat loop will find that intimidating new foes have special weaknesses that can be countered by specific spear attacks. As an example, the stab is a great counter against the grounded melee demons, while flying foes are especially vulnerable to throws. This isn't like Doom Eternal though, as upgrading your abilities will broaden their effectiveness and make them more universally effective against the entire enemy roster. Players should have most of the spear's basic upgrades unlocked by the time they reach the main path's conclusion, although anyone looking to fully master the tool will have to collect special in-game exclusive resources and invest them into the strongest abilities. Those of you who are worried that the combat would transform into Eternal 2.0 with the inclusion of a grapple thankfully have nothing to fear. This interpretation of the meat hook is much more skill-based than its previous iteration, as using it in combat requires the player to make firm, moment-to-moment decisions on how they want to position themselves during battle. Direct meat hooking pulls you towards your target with a mild vertical boost that can be leveraged to vault over your current target. And, once upgraded, it can be chained with additional hooks to hop through the air and find a better position to reinitiate ground combat. The orbit grants increased momentum on the horizontal plane at the expense of verticality. If you choose to invest resources into the orbit upgrade path, you will gain the ability to lock onto your target and continuously orbit around them as you lay down heavy fire. As an added bonus, orbits will automatically add charge to weapons like the Accelerator, Pulverizer, and Shredder, layering an additional level of strategy onto the hook. Do keep in mind that Eternal's air combat is not making your return alongside the meat hook. These new tools are more like catapults that fling you from one position to the next, instead of a gateway into a new plane of combat space. You are not permanently forced to use the spear and are allowed to stick to the shield saw if that's what suits your playstyle. However, players will find that frequently switching between the two left-hand tools is necessary to achieve the level of skill expression required to overcome the 4 master arenas. To conclude today's preview, we'll be diving into some exclusive details mostly derived from a private press interview with Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton. Firstly, there will be 0 playable Atlan mech or dragon segments during the expansion. They did originally plan on including a single Atlan level, but removed it after feeling that it didn't fit into the narrative. Players across the community will be ecstatic to learn that the Archvile does have a fully animated intro sequence similar to the one seen during Doom Eternal's QuakeCon 2018 gameplay reveal. Demons summoned by the Archvile can be turned into walking explosives with a single upgraded spear stab, encouraging players to turn one of the modern Archvile's most notorious attacks against it. The new Warlock Demon can buff surrounding enemies and create lethal area of effect hazards, making him a very high priority target. Other previously unannounced monsters include elemental Hell Knights and zombies that release a damaging effect when killed, along with a new health zombie. This unique fodder type will replace the large crowds of zombies that occupy the background of intense one-on-one fights, giving players the opportunity to quickly regain a sizable chunk of health without running the risk of backing into a fodder swarm. The new hub is a major step up from Eternal's Fortress of Doom, as it's an entire level that features Metroidvania-style backtracking with tons of regions for you to unlock as you progress through the expansion. Exploring every corner of the DLC should feel more earned than it did in the base campaign, since resources and secrets are no longer marked on the automap. Revelations is to Dark Ages what Eternal was to 2016. It's a major step up from the main campaign that expands most elements in such a way that it almost feels like a brand new game, which is pretty impressive considering that it's only been in development for roughly a year. Lore nerds have been encouraged to read through the History of the Sentinels Codex entries from Doom Eternal in order to gain a better understanding of what the expansion's narrative will contain. A pretty large quantity of additional gameplay and enemy details were recently revealed by game director Hugo Martin. Click on the video that's on screen now to learn more. Huge special thanks to id Software, Bethesda, and everyone involved in this event. Today's video would not have been possible without them. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. That's pretty much all that I have for now, though. Until next time.